go round in circles, maybe even fly high like a bird up in the sky. Billy Preston on your oldies but moldies station.
Oldies by the Moldies.
Mhm.
In a little cafe, just the side of the border. Wah,
Wah,
wah.
wah. Oh man, way too much. Too much fun too soon. I should pace myself. All right. Welcome to the Trampled Underfoot podcast with your hosts, Eloy Escovedo on the East Coast and Mark Lindsay on the West Coast. We're here with our dulcet tones to keep you awake, keep you entertained, and keep you staring at this screen for as long as possible. But just remember, even though you're not watching the Trampled Underfoot podcasts, our mellow voices are going through you like a convenience store burrito.
Yeah,
We're the podcast that doesn't need fiber, the Trampled Underfoot podcast.
that's right. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Neither could I. Is my audio okay?
Yeah, it is.
I say that seriously because I've been having nothing but audio problems for like the last 3-4 weeks. Less so on this computer than the one outside. I've got to get it figured out.
You need to throw all the equipment out and start from scratch.
I did that. I did that. I got rid of one headset with a boom mic and brought in my old podcast mic, and now I'm seeing that there's some issues with USB ports going to sleep. So what I'm going to have to do is get me a powered USB hub and plug everything into it and plug it into one USB port that I know doesn't go to sleep. So I'll be in the middle of saying something, and all of a sudden I'll get a little warning that this mic, not this particular mic, but the mic out there has died and it's switched over to the mic built into the camera. And I'm like, that's no good for anybody. It sounds like somebody needs to pull the string on the tin cans just a little bit tighter.
Don't you? Can't you just not wait for when we're all with inserted like computer chips in our brains and we don't have to fumble with? We can just speak and think, and it produces images and stuff, and it's a two-way signal, so the government can tap into your brain and tell you what and what not to do. Isn't that like? I mean, it'll be so much easier. In fact, we could just lay in like somewhere along the street and just watch TV, and or yeah, like everybody will have a and they can track us too. So there's no more question about, sir, your ID. No, just scan my brain. Mac, mac.
Now, did you ever see the movie Wall-E?
Yeah, but a long time ago.
Well, how far are we away from the fat people floating around on mattresses with a monitor in front of them? How far are we away from that? We're missing the mattresses. That's all. They haven't figured out how to make mattresses levitate so we can move around.
I'm not opposed, man. We have to embrace the dystopian, man.
So you took the blue pill.
I took the jar. I said, well,
Give me both.
no, well, yeah. I mean, so we're in it already in terms of, so we've talked about the AI in the past,
Mhm.
um, and it's a double-edged sword, obviously,
Mhm.
because there is so much that one can do with it. I've used it to my advantage since you turned me on to it. Um, and I can't tell you how beneficial it is because I have a work buddy, let's say,
Mhm.
where I sit and I do my thing, whatever topic I'm working on. I interrogate it. I fight with it, and this process for me is a way of like sitting in some sort of gathering and like discussing
Mhm.
the issues at hand because it can be George Washington. You can have an argument. I mean, it's not George Washington, but like the collection of all that we know about George Washington, it can I can have it. I can argue with me, and you're George Washington, or argue with me, and you're Plato,
Hmm.
or just argue with me with none of that. But
Hmm.
it'll bring up like if you touch on what. So, anyways, that's all beneficial, at least in my opinion.
Hmm. Well,
Uh,
yeah, it's a proofreader. It spell checks. It'll do all of that stuff.
it'll do all the task type things, uh,
Hmm.
like spell check, editing, proofreading, like all these things. But what I just mentioned is is a psychological um, um, back and forth that is its own thing, although connected to all that, sure,
Hmm.
but it's its own thing, and I think it's underutilized in that way, so
Hmm.
where the AI is considered a just a tool to get those tasks done, but
Right.
it's actually not that alone.
Hmm.
It's also you being able to tap into the knowledge of the world. What Steve saying?
It'll even make shit up for you.
Yeah, it'll well it depends. So again, um, part of interrogation. So like no, so let me be fair with that statement. No more than if you and I, or you and Steve, me and Steve, any of us buddies, are involved in a conversation, and everything you and I exchange is a summary and a leap, right?
Hmm.
Of what's actually in between the lines. So anything that I communicate to you for the sake of brevity of time and all this and that are summary leaps
Hmm.
of what's actually contained beneath the surface of a sentence, let's say. It could lead into more complicated things. So now, another person might not give a crap or care. And like the sentence, we will eat ice cream this evening, pistachio or vanilla. Um, as an example, that's good enough for some people,
Hmm.
and that's perfectly valid. But so what I'm getting at is this: when you are with this AI and you're doing what I do, let's say,
Hmm.
because you have to ask what it is exactly
Yeah.
that's. Because I mean, who knows what one imagines? You know, there's a difference between a comment like that,
Hmm.
which is a recap somewhere in enough situations. AI has, they call it hallucinated, where it'll give you. It's happened to me too. I've had a
Hmm.
back and forth with it, and it has affirmed things that didn't match.
Hmm.
And
But
uh, go ahead.
I think more to Steve's point is that you can have it create falsehoods for you if you ask it to. You can it will make shit up for you in that you can ask it to make something up and it'll do it.
Yeah, yeah. It'll. Well, that true.
If
That's true
for,
too.
for instance, if you're not a good fiction writer, you can tell it the kind of the story you want, the characters you want, the setting you want, and the date or era that you want it set in, and it will come up with a story for you. It'll make it up for you.
Yeah, but the way he said that,
Hmm.
it also make stuff up. I think is what he said.
Yeah.
Can lead to that direction that you just said.
Hmm.
But look where it led me.
Hmm.
And why does it lead you to that and me to this?
I think because of what we've been exposed to, we have seen phony, absolutely fake arrest pictures, for example.
No, no,
That
no. But
look, hold on, let me finish. You know, and whereas I have seen a proliferation because I tend to hang on YouTube more than anywhere else, I have seen a proliferation of sloppy, uh, um, shoddy AI generated videos, fictional stories that make absolutely no sense whatsoever if you read them or listen to them if they're narrated, for example. So I tended to go towards the fiction part, and you tended to go towards the more nonfiction part. Am I wrong there?
No, so you're right. Basically, you're right foundationally that let me reword what you're saying the way I would say it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but exactly what you just said actually is what ultimately I was thinking. We end up in the same place. But your lens, the Mark Lindsay lens and the Eloy Escajedo lens, are independent of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would focus on different things according to whatever we're interested in. Um, but we're not isolates either.
True.
You live in a world just like I do that we share, where YouTube exists and certain videos
Mm-hmm.
um, pop up and certain themes are repeated so that you and I, like that reference point where you've seen shoddy videos and such,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that too. The leaning that you focus on when it comes to AI would be different than mine, as we're now
Yeah.
seeing. So what I was suggesting is, which you answered anyhow, is that our lenses are different. So my interest and focus is I'm using AI um, to help me in editing,
Mm-hmm.
to help me in dialogue with it
Mm-hmm.
in order to interrogate the way I see AI, which is not often used, I don't think, is instead of it being a tool, it's a doorway into a library of humanity that you can talk to, and it can and it spits back at you. Now, to answer what my interpretation of what Steve was suggesting potentially, and you gave a different option, which is just as valid too. But my interpretation of it through my lens is bring some questions, and this is the thing. If I'm engaged with AI, asking it about the French Revolution,
Mm-hmm.
if I ask it, was the French Revolution good for the monarchs? You know, um, it's gonna say no, and it'll give me some details.
Mm-hmm.
And there's gonna be instances where that's all that a person will use it for.
Yeah.
But what if a person says what shoes were the royals wearing when they got the
Yeah.
what was the the maid's name that passed one letter off to the person that was taken by carriage in order to like, and you start delving into these things
Sure.
and it starts complicating the situation. See, all that complication, that stuff in the middle, as opposed to pistachio or vanilla and this and that,
Mm-hmm.
there's like the walk from the car into the creamery for your ice cream, let's say. There's
Mm-hmm.
all that in between stuff. Well, in that process, it might say something and you'll walk away and you might think that that's it
Mm-hmm.
when it's not it. When it's
Well, it
you,
depends on how deep you want to dive into the details, but yeah.
you might walk away. I don't want to say deceived. So you have this tool, and if you're not, um, you don't interrogate enough, you could inadvertently end up reinforcing a specific bias
Mm-hmm.
concerning whatever history, this,
Right.
that, the other, because you're not rigorous enough, you're not pushing enough. You just want the color pencil number 8 from 1965.
Okay. Okay. But you're kind of wandering off the path. That doesn't have anything to do with you. It will even make shit up for you
Because what I'm saying is this, that the well, you're right. Let me get back to that, because
because
this is
not having all the data is not the same as making stuff up. So
no, it's not. You're right. Um, it's just this is what I'm involved with it in, and that I've had to
sure.
push doors
Hmm.
in the
Well,
conversation to cross that line. But to address that,
well,
um,
to clear it up, Steve says I meant it both ways, but more like Eloy.
okay, so the act of making something up,
Mhm,
um, or it making something up, it's not unlike human beings.
mhm,
Um, Now the intention is a different story. With human beings, you have it in theory. Here's
mhm.
the problem with this. In theory, you and I in a conversation, depending on the stakes involved in, according to the topic,
Sure.
um, where you're pushing your narrative, which
Mhm,
you think is valid, and I'm pushing my narrative, which I think is valid, and we don't seem to be able to come to,
mhm.
agreement on a particular detail and whatnot.
Right.
And I might say something to you in order to compensate
Mhm,
and make a leap in order to salvage or stake a claim
mhm.
and have it be valid prematurely. So whatever, it can be anything, but you get the point where I'm going to say something that it's not necessarily untrue, um, but I haven't built a case for it.
It's
And
just enough of a non sequitur that it just kind of, wait a
it
minute.
bridges it bridges
Right.
and it allows me to reach the end of the story, and
Mhm,
and sort of like claim some sort of,
mhm.
in that instance, some sort of victory over what I'm trying to assert in this and that.
Right.
Okay,
Understood.
well, human conversation is full of that stuff.
Yeah, it is. But if I start making stuff up in the middle of our discussion, that muddies everything up. And now you can't trust it. Not only can you not trust a single thing that I've said, you've got to backtrack and figure, wait a minute,
Yeah.
he
Okay.
just said this.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, and
Mhm,
that's true, there is then the suspicion,
mhm,
but it's impossible for you to not do, and me
mhm,
and Steve and the guy across the street and the other dude and the
mhm.
lady and
Yeah.
everybody on earth, it's impossible when using the tool of language
Mhm,
to not skip over, because the act of speaking the way we are is a
mhm,
shortcut one after the other of ideas that we have reserved in the background
mhm.
and maybe not totally formed properly, that we can't really deliver.
Right.
So what I'm getting at is, AI doesn't have the intentionality that we have.
Nope.
However, well, no, I don't want to jump to that. That's just it doesn't have the intent. We know that human beings, like, we're dealing with ego,
We have intent. Yeah.
so we have intent. So, but now AI is this thing that's sitting there. You access it, and then it's spitting stuff out. But now here's the thing: um, in order to bridge gaps, it too. So, like, for instance, I have in the past said, "Well, tell me about Eloy Escajedo,"
Yeah.
to see, and it'll say, "Oh, Eloy Escajedo, so and this and that." I say, "Okay, and what else?" The what else
Mhm,
becomes a problem, because all it has is what it found of Eloy Escajedo, and then I've seen it say, "Well, Eloy Escajedo and this extra stuff," and I said, well, "Wait a second, none of that extra stuff is true."
mhm.
And I'll tell it, and then it'll say, "Oh yeah, you're right." It's trying to.
Hmm.
bridge gaps that it can't grab onto. So it's got all this information,
Right.
but wherever there's darkness, so there's this thing that they call hallucinations, that AI hallucinations and whatnot. And so that is a. But now here's the other thing, the final thing about this. Um, as far as intentionality, yes, you and I were human. That's not under in question. Um, and so AI doesn't have intentionality. However, it's programmed by programmers. It can roam free
Hmm.
in terms of like you access it, and there's a qualifier with the word free. You can access it, and it has volumes that you can
Hmm.
explore, more than you can deal with, more than
Yeah.
you can imagine. It's got more,
Hmm.
but it was programmed with side bumpers,
Hmm.
with gutters
That won't let you go in certain directions. Yeah.
that won't let you go in certain directions because they're considered harmful or potentially harmful
Mhm. Or illegal or potentially illegal. Yeah.
or potentially illegal. The key is harmful, illegal,
Hmm.
outside the bounds of whatever the programmers
Hmm.
thought of. So, in
Okay.
a sense, you have this huge universe of knowledge,
Yeah.
but people behind it created the bumpers and the sat. Yeah.
Right.
So there's a conflict of interest there because
Well,
the. Go ahead. Go ahead.
well, but again, I think we've kind of drifted away from Steve's original comment in that it says it will even make stuff up for you. That sentence indicates you have asked it to make stuff up. So it doesn't need to have intent. You have intent. It will even make shit up for you. You've asked it to make it up.
Yeah, that doesn't change any of like what I said is completely in line with everything else. The fact that you use it as a tool
But
to make things up for you is
mhm,
another aspect. It's not
right.
isolate.
But what I'm getting at is you've just taken away that you've taken the harness off to where it no longer has to use facts. It no longer really has to access, it may have to access its data sets to get dates right and the names of people it associates with, but not necessarily so. You've taken off the reins. If you want it to make something up, if I wanted to make up a story about Eloy Escovedo taking part in the Great Brinks robbery in the 1950s, it'll do it
Yeah.
because I've asked it to.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, um and
so
what
it's not the AI's intent, it's my intent.
well that is another important thing. That's one key thing. So,
Mhm,
well, two things. One is that people use it as a tool.
mhm.
They view it as a tool. They don't necessarily view it as an exploratory
No.
uh, co
Mhm,
co journeyman.
mhm.
But it's not just a tool. It's also that. And what you just said, it's also with that co journeyman in
Mhm.
exploring. It's also a mirror of you. So
Yeah.
you interact with something. um it can be that, or it can be a computer. Think of it like your computer, how you put the folders and all that. If
Yeah.
you go to any other person, they have their folders arranged in their unique ways. It's basically a mirror of the intent of you.
Mhm. Well,
um
yeah, you've explored that yourself because you yourself have said that after a while it gets used to the way you query it. Gets used to the kind of things you're looking for, and it starts responding to you more like you would expect somebody to respond to you rather than just cold hard facts.
just imagine a gate. You're you,
Hmm.
and AI is a gate.
Hmm.
And in that gate, there's a tear in the fabric of space and time in your living room, in your room.
Mhm.
No, I'm like dead serious.
Mhm.
It's a metaphor
Mhm.
but whatever.
Yeah, I get
There's
it.
a tear in reality,
Mhm.
like pulling down a zipper and opening, the jacket, and
Mhm.
inside is a vast space which represents just all the knowledge that it can access.
Mhm.
And the key here is that um, inside that are conversations that a you know uh,
Mhm.
priest somewhere in Ireland 300 years ago
Yeah.
uh, left documented, or a philosopher in Greece, and all that stuff, like just all that, and random stuff of like regular people, all mashed into that's it's all there in that expanse. And when you approach that expanse, you communicate with it. It is a as opposed to think of it like metal and parts and stuff. um, you are accessing a vast library, a living, because
Mhm.
the voice, the way it's trained to to reply to you, um, is the language that you use, which is
Sure.
linguistic, or through typing, whatever. And so you're using that avenue, but that that speech or that typing are letters that make sentences and paragraphs, and just because of the nature of writing, you can only do you can only introduce a few things within that structure at a time.
Yeah.
So it has that to communicate with you, but it has ones and zeros that
Yeah.
scan all the libraries it can, and so it's holding in its capacity
Mhm.
more than language as a carrier
Mhm.
can
Yeah.
spill into you. So if you don't use language, which is the carrier, to communicate with it and knock down doors in order to get more, um, you you might end up walking away thinking um, that you have a right answer, or you know I guess we'll stick with that. If you're interrogating it
That
about,
you know the whole story, basically.
that's better. Actually, that's better. Exactly. That's perfect. If you're talking about Spanish Florida in 1801, and the years starting to unfold where everything was going to go into the hands of the United States, and you come with a preconceived idea, there's facts that are left on the cutting room floor, and AI will validate for you according to the
What you
lack,
ask it. Yeah.
of curiosity to
Mhm.
break down the doors that you might need to break down to know more.
So
So
it's like the Cliff Notes version of what actually happened, but custom Cliff Notes geared towards the way you ask the questions and what questions you ask.
it's all up to, like you said earlier, it's up to you, and what you want. So if I want to reaffirm
Mhm.
my stance on some sort of ideology,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
um, well, me personally, I can get it to do that.
Mhm.
It's not like I'm so, but like I know that if I avoid asking certain questions
Mhm.
and push towards other questions, I can sort of, it's not perfect because remember, you're dealing with access to but you can steer it around. And I'm not sure that most people would do that. They ask a simple question. Hey, did that person do this and that in that election? Let's say. It'll say, yes, that person did that. Aha, confirmed. All my judgments are true because it confirmed that I said that. Like, it depends on the person's window and capacity to interrogate themselves. So, anyways, whatever. So it'll hallucinate, like Steve was suggesting, to fill in certain gaps. Uh,
Mhm.
but this is not like it's doing it at every turn. There's a few moving parts here. It's the user, the person, the guardrails that the makers installed in it,
Right.
and then just the AI itself during that exchange. If you leave a gap and then you ask to fill it, it'll try to fill it any way it can.
Yeah.
Not all the time, right? Is it, well, I'm not sure. Could you add more information? It can say all that kind of stuff, but
Or just omit something that it doesn't know or have in its data set.
and it can admit stuff.
Mhm.
So, but anyways, with all that said, all these things are beneficial, but we have talked about some downsides.
Yeah.
But the problem is all that to the side with the videos that show flickering and
Uh-huh.
the same thing that happens to us when we're wandering about online, watching videos on YouTube, we're over on Facebook and this and that, where all of a sudden advertising pops up that matches the picture, right?
I'm laughing about that because I had a case of that yesterday. Go ahead.
So we know already because we've talked about it really
Mhm.
where, hey man, we're talking about trains and all of a sudden like train videos pop or whatever, stuff like that. Well, um, AI, how does it make its money?
Yeah.
It's the same. It's a
Yep.
more exact method of collecting everything that you think, do, um, choices. It's a database builder
Mhm.
of humanity,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
it's bought and it's bought and sold. It's stored, bought and sold by, be it in the aggregate or who knows.
Yeah.
Even so, imagine a very important politician, whether today or 5 years down the line, either way, using AI and let's say doing something like I do with it, as opposed to asking it to create pictures, which is, a great thing in itself. I do that too, but interrogating psychologically, like just seeing where things go and really dishing out information that's detailed. Imagine that politician in some place, and another in some other feeding it, unbeknownst to them,
Mhm.
all these questions, these things, and it building a psychological profile that then later is stored and can be bought by conglomerates and corporations and for political use and this and that. And imagine the implications of that.
I'm a 21st century Manchurian candidate.
Yeah, it's a big data collection,
Mhm.
um, spying apparatus.
Well,
Um, it's a, oh yes,
and again, we do it to ourselves.
oh no.
We do it to ourselves.
Well, yeah, yeah, we do it to ourselves, but there's a catch-22 with that as well, because it's like, you know, if you loved horses and you were comfortable with the process back in the day, and all of a sudden these cars, you can fight it. There's one or two cars on the road, but by the time you're in the 1920s or 30s, and like New York City is surrounded by automobiles, and you're the guy with the horse, they'll take you and your frickin' flea bag of a horse. They'll put you on a frickin' train and truck your ass down the road. Like so, we become obsolete.
Not necessarily, unless you're the guy that's uh, got the horse-drawn carriage in Central Park.
No, dude, the metaphor is for
I get it.
that
I
today we're doing things
Mhm.
that back in the 80s we wouldn't have dreamt of
Yes.
because we would have thought of it as pretty freaking dystopian.
Well,
Um, So what I'm saying is that we are conditioned across time because it's useful, and at the same time we're allowing what you're saying, which was like we're giving them
Hmm.
the
But
access.
we also have to remember the human condition in that we also have to believe what it's saying 100%. Even when we know that there are things like hallucinating, where you asked it about yourself and it came up with a bunch of stuff that you absolutely know was not the case. But you don't know that somebody, one of your distant cousins in Spain or in South America, didn't see that exact same thing and doesn't know you enough to know that that's not true. If we believe it, it's true. And that's been the whole point from the get go. I mean, as long as there's been language, if you tell the lie often enough, it becomes the truth. That's my problem with it, is that you know, because it was you searching for yourself, what information is true and what information was false. I only know about you what you have told me. So if I saw all that other stuff and didn't have reason to question it, I would assume it would be true, because why would it lie? See what I'm getting at? We would have to believe AI and believe everything it tells us
Yeah, but here's the thing about,
for that to gain traction.
yeah, look,
And there's enough people out there that would not question it, that is a very high probability
yeah, but
that
look,
yes, it would.
no, I look, most people, I mean, I shouldn't say most people, but it sounds true enough. It sounds true enough. That
I
doesn't,
think I think you would be accurate in that when you say most people, you're talking about more than 50%, and I think that's pretty accurate.
when I say most people, it's a slippery slope.
Mhm,
Um, but I'm acknowledging it's a slippery slope. So if
mhm,
somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, most people, blah blah blah," period,
mhm.
that person's problem. Um, but if somebody says to you, "Hey, man, you know, and such and most people," but I'm going off the rails a little bit. I'm not
Yeah,
sure most people like if they
it
qualify it. If
yeah,
you have a binary, um, sort of like rigid conclusion, and
mhm,
you don't qualify it with available, like if you don't even recognize that your
yeah.
staunchness on something, it
You're saying vanilla or pistachio, and I'm over here with chocolate going, "Oh, really?"
what the problem is because that indicates that the person is not considering that variables,
Mhm.
and that means that that's problematic down the road. But anyways, um, um, uh, crap, we went down the wrong lane because there was something else that you were mentioning, and you were saying that I have a problem
That
with.
people would have to believe it.
Okay, okay, so if you consider people at large out there,
Mhm,
the same people that watch many of the same movies we watch,
mhm,
they'll watch like the one that I brought up, a Roman, like a movie, a Roman movie, ancient
mhm,
Rome, and they do not question. The thought doesn't even, and not that they should or shouldn't. I'm just saying that
mhm,
the idea that Romans don't speak the King's English,
mhm.
the
Yeah,
idea that the Romans, ancient Romans, were British blokes,
uh-huh. Yeah,
Cockney British blokes,
and
uh,
used modern UK slang.
right? Or even when it's a convincing
Yeah.
docu series type thing,
Mhm,
um, people don't question all that.
mhm.
It's a modern interpretation
Right,
translated for an American or English speaking audience
right.
so that we can consume it and
Hmm.
then the movie, and we have the suspension of disbelief and this and
Hmm.
that. But for some people, there's no suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
We assume, here's the thing. So I don't know about you, but so one of the I haven't, I can't prove this, but I've this is something that I still have to deal with. But when you and I are talking about ancient Rome,
Hmm.
okay, yeah, I mean, dig this. I don't know what's in your head about ancient
No,
Rome,
no,
but
there's no way you can.
right, but according to what we've gone back and forth with,
Hmm.
we're in a general vicinity pocket
Hmm.
where we know, right, that Rome, ancient Rome, wasn't 200 years ago.
No. Yeah.
It wasn't right after the American Civil War.
Yeah. Right. It wasn't just before World War II. Right.
Right. We kind of sort of. I mean, nobody's
Yeah,
perfect, but
we know there's a BC and an AD there.
right. We know that there's some sort of arc of time.
Hmm. Yeah.
We know that the car, automobile, 20th century, actually, it bridged that. We know that the horse before that. We know toilets before that, latrines and freaking out. Like we
Yeah.
have a map. Well,
A baseline. Yeah.
right, and then we have gaps, of course.
Hmm.
Well, a lot of people, I don't know how many, but I've started to piece some pieces together. There are people that have no freaking concept
Hmm.
because they haven't interrogated it.
Yeah.
They have
It's not something they're interested in. Yeah.
right, but reference points to these sort of things
Hmm.
are meaningless. So then when they're watching, like to them, you
What an
know,
amazing documentary.
like Jay Leno's thing, what's the capital of the United States? And people are like,
Or
uh yeah, just all that. And it's not that they're dumb. Well, we don't know that either. It could be any number of things. They weren't
mhm.
exposed. They didn't, they could be brilliant, and yet not, because
In
there's
something else. Yeah. Oh yeah. I knew a guy that did calculus just as a hobby. He loved it. But the boy didn't have common sense to pour piss out of a boot. I mean, that's just
so if we don't have factual context of a map of
mhm,
like points of interest when it comes to the world around us,
mhm.
why would we question a Roman ancient Roman movie and Russell Crowe's with his um,
Well,
um,
yeah,
accent and
yeah.
like we wouldn't question. And this is what allows, like, these gaps
Mhm.
is what allows people to question a whole bunch of stuff, man. And by the way, I assume a lot as well. I'm not trying to say that I am sitting from the lofty hillside. Look at no, um,
But you
no,
don't even have to go that far back, man. I mean, that the movie Titanic was huge a few years back. It was absolutely huge, and it was seen as a major romance. People not remembering how many people died on that thing.
yeah,
All they know is Leo went underwater. Oh no! She could have moved over and let him get it, dude. What about the what was it? 1,200 people that went down with the rest of the ship.
yeah,
Oh, wasn't that romantic? No, it was a horror film. you know?
yeah. Well, these are the. So I'm not opposed to, like we talked about it last week, I think, where we talked about myths being and stories being useful and good, like, or
Mhm.
the old west things,
Yeah.
like, no, like, and you mentioned that one time you said something to the effect of, like, you made a point of this one evening, and by the way, after you talked about that movie, which was the comedy of the Old West one with the
Blazing Saddles.
Blazing Saddle. Once
Mhm,
you said that, I went back and I watched it. Actually, I watched it a couple of times. Um, and you made it a point to say that something to the effect of that. This basically ruined or unmasked this illusion
mhm.
because it showed some dirty truths in a comedic slapstick way.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember in that episode that I said to you, I like the myths and such and this and that, but and I still do. So like I still do. I so but
And
just because I see an old west movie, let's
mhm,
say, like let's say I'll just say this: if I see an old west movie and then someday I'm in New Mexico in one of the towns that
mhm.
could have been filmed at,
Yeah.
personally, the bridge or leap or gap in my mind does not like I don't use the movie as an absolute
Mhm,
reference point for what people in that damn town
mhm.
are actually when I went to California. Yes, I scanned the area in maps before going, this, that, and the other. But when I went, I I
Yeah,
did it.
being there is completely different than seeing it on a map or street view. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't objectify
Mhm,
um the I was experiencing it,
mhm. Well,
but it doesn't have to come in any conflict. A story's a story.
right. Well, the in speaking about Blazing Saddles in specific, and that came about because I'd seen a video called "You Wouldn't Be Able to Make Blazing Saddles Today, and Why Would You Want to?" And basically, he explored the theory, which I agreed with 100%, that since the 1920s, since before there were even talkies, it was still silent films, the Old West was being portrayed as clean and wholesome. And villains wore black hats and they were always after the young ranch widow or whatever. And it just wasn't that way. The Old West was not clean. It was not wholesome. And that's what the movie Blazing Saddles set out to do, was to explode the pop culture myth that it was, because we had been fed again since the late 20s this steady diet that was 100% a myth. It was 100% fiction. And in fact, before the movie Blazing Saddles, of the top 5 TV shows, 3 of them were westerns, and they were one, two, three: Gunsmoke, Bonanza, and I always forget the third one. Oh crap! I can't remember the third one.
The Lone Ranger.
It'll it'll come back to me. Anyway, um, I hate that when that happens because I'm gonna like remember next April when it doesn't matter. Anyway, um, and we were still being fed that white hat versus black hat thing. And the whole purpose of Blazing Saddles was to explode that. You didn't even see horse poop in the road on Bonanza or Gunsmoke. And it was all over the place in Blazing Saddles because the Old West was not clean and wholesome. And that was the whole purpose behind the movie. And after that movie, westerns just died. That's when you started seeing the spaghetti westerns and other things that were a little bit more realistic.
But the tradition of movies
Mhm.
comes from an extension or progression of vaudeville acts that were on a stage, and maybe they had like painted
Mhm.
backgrounds
Yeah.
just to change scenes that were kind of like
Mhm.
you were watching a theatrical. um, spectacle in an environment that was either saloons or theaters. So, like people knew that they had to suspend. I mean, I'm assuming this is so because I've gone to theaters in current our time, and you have to sort of suspend some sort of, like you're not watching reality.
Yeah, you know that. But when you're fed a steady diet of nothing but that, again, if you tell the lie often enough, it becomes the truth. And when you see it being portrayed that way all the time, you believe it.
Right. And but at the on the other hand, there's no other. If you think about it, what other option is so? What other option is there in society to to remember the Civil War as an example?
Mhm,
You know that out of 140 some odd million or 340 some odd million Americans
mhm.
in today's world, uh, a fair amount of them have whatever um,
Knowledge of the Civil War. Yeah.
knowledge of the Civil War. It's an event that
Mhm.
it was. I mean, a lot of people died. It changed everything. It changed everything.
Yeah.
Um, it was a different country after the fact.
Mhm.
I don't know the whole story, how
No.
many lives and this and that. I know
Well,
a generalized and
mhm.
some little. I have a certain thing, but there's people that are scholars that sit in. But anyways, how else? As I was growing up, as an example, watching Matthew Broderick in that one movie with the African American group of like that one movie that he did, or watching Gone with the Wind, or any number of even documentaries.
Mhm.
How else is the memory kept unless you sit and read with a book, and the general public at large might not, or at school obviously, but to continue the memory of it, how else but to enact it in some sort of performance, and create these sort of
Well,
like,
it's
spec.
a valid point. It is a valid point. Nowadays, we have information available at our fingertips. So we can look into stuff a heck of a lot easier than you and I could growing up because we had TV, movies, or the library. And don't nobody want to go to the library on a Saturday. I'm out on my bike, leave me alone. But now it's real easy to cross reference something and question anything that you've been taught.
Yeah,
But that is a valid point. How else are you supposed to portray these things? Maybe you don't have to be 100% perfect about it, but a little bit of realism. As the spaghetti westerns came out, as more of the grittier western movies started being made, more R rated and PG-13 rated, we started to see that the West wasn't that clean place, that people were dirty, they were sweaty, whether they were good guys or bad guys. They wore hats of many different sizes, shapes, and colors, or none at all. It wasn't black hat, white hat. It wasn't the gentleman sheriff helping the rancher woman down off of her wagon so she could go into the general store and mercantile and buy a sack of flour. It wasn't that at all. It was real life in a different setting. It wasn't this romanticized view of the Old West. And we were being fed a constant, steady diet of nothing but a romanticized view of the Old West. Yeah, it did keep the Old West alive, but a fictional account. And for most of the population, that fiction became the truth.
that's where the problem is, where
Mhm,
the leap in assumption or the
mhm,
shortcut
Mhm.
it becomes the reference point, and this is true for if you consider much of everything.
Mhm.
This is the reference points problem,
Yeah.
where people leap or or aren't even curious other than the movie's version of reality.
Mhm. Well, you said it yourself. How else are we supposed to keep that alive? You're absolutely right. How else do you keep that alive? Except today, we can investigate on our own real easy. Don't have to go to the library. Back when you and I were coming up, we had to accept what we saw.
Well, no, hold on.
We could accept that it was fiction because we don't know the dialogue that happened on a battlefield during the Battle of Gettysburg.
Let me ask you this: when you watched the Ten Commandments
Mhm,
with Charlton Heston,
mhm,
which was epic, and I didn't
mhm.
watch it when it originally came out, but it used to be played a lot back in the
Yeah,
if you remember,
yeah.
and it was epic.
Mhm,
Um, when you watched that,
mhm.
did you think even back then? Oh yeah, yeah. Uh, this is like authentic. Let me,
No, I knew that, but it wasn't. But I knew that I was watching a fictional account, and that was a
right.
one. But that was a one-off. It wasn't every single movie.
Well, that's true. It's you know what it's like. Pictures of Jesus.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
there you go.
I grew up with the particular,
Mhm,
and so and then one day at some point I don't even remember. I ran across, you know, with the hair curlied and
mhm.
tie and this and that and
The face a little bit wider, fatter.
yeah and dark
Mhm. Yeah,
complexion. I was like, wait a second.
yeah.
And so then the question is, in something like that,
Mhm,
yes, it matters.
mhm,
Um, the thing is, once you get used to something,
mhm,
there could be two things. You could be nonchalant about it,
mhm,
like when you're presented something that contradicts all the stuff that you thought about
mhm,
a thing, and you're like, oh, okay, well, all right, I'll look into it. Okay,
mhm.
there's that, and then there's no, throw, release the Kraken, kill.
Blasphemer! Blasphemer! Get
There's
out the pitchforks and torches.
both versions are human to do
Mhm,
because we demand. I demand stability
mhm.
in the um, world that we understand the reference points, but I'm not that necessarily troubled with being presented something that's totally freaking opposite of what I
And
thought, and then I'm like, well, heck. I did a deep dive recently concerning the Constitution and the transition from pre Civil War United States to post, and that and
reconstruction and what have you. Yeah.
well, it was more to do with the document itself, but yeah, all that included. But it's more to do with the law in itself, and I was like, whoa! It slapped me around a little bit. Um, I mean, I didn't go nuts, but I was like, holy smokes!
Mhm.
And so little things like that, you could get shocked, and maybe you could rebel and this and that, but so just because I didn't know something before, and now I know something that I didn't know before, um, all it means is that you have to add and adjust the understanding of that which
Yeah.
you thought, but
If
you don't necessarily replace the whole. So the
Well,
Civil War,
but first you have to admit and accept the fact that you have room for growth. and you have room to gain more knowledge. Whether you like what you learn or not is irrelevant. The fact that you learned it, you absorbed it, now you have to process it. That's all legit as well.
I'll give you an example of this sort of. It's the same as, well, it's similar. It's slightly similar, but it'll fit here. It's the same as what you're saying with the white hat, black hat, and then all of a sudden, and then it gets grittier to show more of the mud and this and that. Whereas before, it was a little bit more, or not a little bit, it was pretty clean and all. Right?
Oh, my darling Clementine, you are lost and gone forever. Yeah.
So I didn't know this one. You probably know this. I don't know if you do or not, but and in fact, I'm just saying this. I didn't check, but you but it's sounded so plausible that it might be true. So I'm admitting that I don't. It's not like I checked, but I'll just tell you. Mexico City
Mhm.
holds a parade of the dead,
Mhm. The Day of the Dead, yes.
and they have floats
Mhm.
and these huge, ghoul masks, this,
Mhm.
that, and the other, skeletal, this, that, and the other,
Sugar skulls and the whole thing.
and all that.
Mhm.
And I was like, yeah, I've seen this before. I ran into a clip
Mhm.
where they went into detail. And the guy said, you know what's funny about all this, about the parade? That this is how myths and legends are started. This is how traditions are started. And I was like, huh? And it said, the video did, that during one James Bond filming,
Mhm.
Mexico City petitioned that they film it there. They wanted the
Mhm.
advertising and this, that, and the other. And they did. So in one
Mhm.
of the James Bond films, and they had this parade, and then the film was over. And then the Chamber of Commerce and all these people of Mexico City were like, we're expecting tourism and this and that, but wait a second, we don't have such a said parade like that. James Bond has it. People are going to come here expecting a parade. We've got no parade
Mhm.
whatsoever. And so they invented
Mhm.
post movie a parade that became Mexican, that didn't exist in Mexico City, and now it's visited and viewed by millions of people.
Mhm.
And so and so one some people were arguing that you should not force culture, traditions should not be corporatized or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, and then he argued that's how most, if not all, most traditions begin. It's forced onto the
Yeah.
society.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
when
didn't.
you think about it, yeah. I mean, do you remember the first time you ever hunted Easter eggs?
Um, I don't remember the first time.
Do you remember being told why, or just that it's Easter, we got to go hunt eggs?
No, it
I
was
don't
eggs.
I don't either. But if you think about it, all of our holiday traditions were more or less forced upon us. We went willingly, but we had no decision. We had no choice. So it was forced upon us. We knew, okay, Easter Sunday, there's going to be a basket. We're going to go hunt for eggs, and I get a hollow chocolate rabbit. Sweet. Then we know on 4th of July, we light fireworks. We don't know why. We don't care why. It's cool. We'll get to watch stuff burn and blow up. I'm for it. We learn on Thanksgiving we eat turkey. Okay, well, we had turkey in April too. I don't know what's so special about this day, but we're having turkey again. Mom's baking about 40 lemon pies. I like it. I'm here for it. Christmas, we get presents. I'm here for it. New Year's, all the parents are drunk and hungover the next day. Don't see the attraction. I'm watching cartoons anyway. All I know is I'm out of school.
Right.
but we had no input into those decisions.
No.
So we didn't even know why we did it. If we could be bothered, we looked into it, we looked it up. I still don't know why you would get eggs to an animal that hops, because it seems to me, well, now that I think about it, that's why they hard boil them and put the grass in the basket. Okay, never mind. Never mind.
Yeah. Well, one thing let me just say this about Easter eggs. One thing I can tell you back in the day
Hmm.
that we had the plastic ones, and then they had little stuff in them.
Hmm.
But I would see on TV back in the day that they did all this sort of painting and real eggs.
Hmm.
I was like, man, that's the real legit. And then
Hmm.
I come to our local things, and they were plastic and tucked in different places, and this and that.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, wait a second. How about those really ornate and like they're? So I always had an issue with that as a kid. I didn't. I pressed,
Hmm.
but did that happen to you?
Yeah. Do you remember having the little die kit sitting at the kitchen table with the newspaper laid out,
Yeah.
and every coffee cup in the house was being used, and there was a different colored dye in each
Yeah, we did.
one?
We did paint in some instances. We did paint.
Yeah, yeah, you had the little wire thing that you kind of bent so it would hold the egg, and you dropped it in there, and then you lifted it out with that.
We
Yeah.
didn't do it all the time. I did eventually. We had whether it was school that we did it,
Mhm.
but at home it was like the you
Mhm.
the egg with the its clips together or
The
whatever.
plastic, yeah, that
Yeah,
snapped, yeah. Hmm. Yeah. There used to be, I don't know if it was still around in the 80s. There used to be a brand of pantyhose called Legs, and it was L apostrophe eggs. And they came in a big white egg, like an ostrich egg
I
size.
remember that.
You popped it open, there was your pantyhose. So we had all these big white plastic eggs floating around.
I remember those freaking because I thought, man, that looks like a. I remember those, dude.
I always wanted to paint a couple of those up and use them for Easter, but I was a 12-year-old kid. What do I know?
Look, the thing that you described about Easter and other holidays and the turkey.
Hmm.
Nobody asked you. You entered into this. Um,
Oh, this is just what we do. Cool.
Not that you questioned it. You just said, "Hey, well, okay, here
Hmm.
we are."
I'm here
Um,
for it.
so this is the world that we come into, and it's constructed already. Like we've come
Hmm.
into a already ongoing world,
Hmm.
and 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 the traditions are accepted. So this applies up and down the scale of
Hmm.
other things, and all these things that are accepted are literally the way we can function in this world. So
Yeah.
we need so nothing just like language and jumping to conclusions.
Hmm.
I scan this room right now and I'm capturing boxed or clumps
Hmm.
of concepts, ideas.
Right.
I'm not interrogating
No,
the plastic
because
the plastic bag on the corner with the products in there or the headset over and it's just I know it's there but I'm not focused. My lens is not. I'm scanning and but let me get to this. Just the fact that I'm not focused on the details but I have the overview,
hmm
this consciousness, this being aware, I require this to be there. And if I reach to the plastic bag or to the headsets and I focus my lens on that, then I focus my lens. But I need this construction around me. You understand? Now
yes.
this is key. It's taken for granted, but we maneuver the world because the world exists around us, as far as we can tell. And we need these reference points, the
Yes.
Easter, the Christmas,
Hmm.
the stories, the tales, what's good, what's
Yes.
bad.
Yes.
All this is necessary to be able to interact.
Civilized society. Yes.
Yeah, and since we can't have in our hands the Civil War
Right.
as if it's right there happening,
Hmm.
there is no other choice but to have a summary version of the Civil War
Yeah.
that doesn't do justice to the countless individuals, human beings that left farm and family for an unexpected end.
Right.
It just it
Well,
it doesn't do it justice, but it's all we can do better individually, but like
yes.
as a
Mhm.
society, these myths, let's say, or these shortcuts,
These portrayals. Yeah.
yeah, how else are we going to do it?
Yeah. I mean, unless you're going to study it, because there are a ton of books out there, there are a ton of documentaries out there. But no matter how well produced they are, no matter how well they were written, they cannot touch upon every single thing. They can't touch upon every thought, every emotion, and they damn sure can't capture dialogue
I've touched
because, because we weren't there to know what was said.
for the Civil War. I can tell you right now, I've touched
Mm.
on only
Yeah.
as a reference point, just
Mhm.
because I wanted to know. I'll tell you, I'm going to say I just counted five. I know there's more, but I'm going to say 8 to 10 individuals as key placeholders.
Mhm.
And that's not even true. It's probably a little bit more than that because I have looked at General Lee,
Okay.
I've looked at Custard, and other people, and so that's not true. But let's just say that I've really sat with, and
Mhm.
even then, just to write a
It,
thing that's
you're
of
scratching, yeah, you're just scratching the surface. Yeah.
when we're talking about
Hmm. Yeah.
hundreds of thousands. So, but the point is that even that is
Hmm.
a drop in the bucket of like, and so, but what else do we have
Yeah. Agreed. Unless you're going to study it, we don't have a whole hell of a lot. We have the portrayals that we see
on
on
TV?
in the movies or well, let's just say in pop culture.
Yeah, and
And I also have to say now, when I started laughing a couple of minutes ago,
yeah,
and you kind of said, "Well, wait a minute, this is key." What
yeah.
I was laughing at was the fact that you brought your hand real close to the camera and you said, "Our focus has to be," and your camera went out of focus at just that second.
Oh, that's funny.
And then it came back into focus. But I mean, you said, "Our focus has to be," and then your camera went blurry. And I'm like, "Oh man, that was too good." So that's why I was laughing. Anyway, yeah, I mean, you're right. However, I still have to come back and say, if all you're being told about the Civil War is a romanticized version of it that eliminates, doesn't even consider the hundreds of thousands of dead and wounded. It doesn't even consider that and doesn't make it the important event that it was and just makes it seem like a chivalrous act conducted by a few people on two sides who couldn't agree on what to have for lunch, then that's what you're going to believe. If that's the only thing you have coming for 30, 40 years, if you're being fed the same thing your dad was being fed because he was being fed it, his dad was being fed it, you start to believe the myth. And that's the only point about that was that a lot of times, yes, it's being kept alive, but a lot we have to kind of back up and take a look at it and remember that this very possibly could be a romanticized version of what actually happened. Yes, it's fiction. Yes, it's a portrayal of events that did happen, but in a fictionalized way. We have to remember that. We have to be able to step back and say, okay, this wasn't a documentary. Let's remember that.
Yeah, like for instance, my insistence on the Constitution as a point of reference for current events and just in general
Hmm.
is not like a petulant thing,
Hmm.
and it's not an idealized thing either in terms of like you know, hey, and the Constitution, um,
Says this.
it's it's almost 100% selfish. My interest in it, to be frank,
Well, that's to be understood looking at your family history.
and well, because of my family history, my interest, and that selfishness, by the way, is see, I didn't want to go there that prematurely, but um, so I won't. I'll leave that alone. My selfish interest, which is the intention of the Constitution anyhow, but just
Mhm.
the same, I say I don't want to go in that direction, but is preservation of individual liberty and stability,
Mhm.
and the division of powers. Not that I'm a scholar, not that it's selfish in that I know or I believe that all that makes it difficult for others to run roughshod, and it's sort of more it's sort of more or less imperfectly work for over 250 or for about 250 years coming up.
Yeah.
So so that's why I insist on it, not because it's some virtue thing, although it retroactively kind of works. It's because the intention is to
Yeah.
think this is important because it conserves, a certain level of,
Mhm.
but it's also a measuring stick, um, to situations, let's say,
Yeah.
current and otherwise.
Of course.
However, the same applies with our movie reference points with the Cowboys, our Roman, the Easter, and all that with the Constitution as well, where it becomes a placeholder for some old document, um, for the population at large now currently. In that case, it's no longer all of these traditions are important, but the concept tradition of the Constitution is fundamental in our case.
Well, it's the supreme law of the land, so there. I mean,
Yeah,
that's more or less says it all.
yeah, yeah, and so it becoming a sort of like blur of a thing is sort of problematic. Like,
Well,
I'll just say this: just like a Texan guy in the 21st century, sure, the guy may be generationally Texan, and we can't know unless we deal with a specific example. But like just broadly, they don the suit, the hat. Um, that's a far cry, even though they may have a generational connection and this and that. But which is important ultimately. But they're not a cowboy in 1878 Texas.
true.
They're a cowboy if they're ranchers,
Mhm.
whatever the case might be, in the 21st century.
Mhm.
Okay, um, the lens is affected by all the realities of our modern life.
Mhm.
They would likely have a cell phone in their pocket.
Well, yeah, he probably got out there and he's not herding cattle on a horseback. He's probably on an ATV.
So we're the same but different, but as time goes on, the specifics of the past become placeholders. And if you are that cowboy in that family and you're generationally Texan and you have your old family photos and like just like I would have or you have with your
Mhm.
family, that link is not severed. It's a continuum. But could I say I have a notion of my great grandfather and grandfather walking about Cantabria, Spain, in the 1800s and in 1911 with my grandfather. But because I've seen the photos
Mhm.
and I've read the stories and the bulletins.
Mhm.
But I really, 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 really know Sweetwater, Florida.
Yeah.
You know
And
what I mean?
you've never been to Cantabria. So you
Exactly.
don't have that as a frame of reference. So yeah,
Mhm.
sure.
And so, you know, um, but we need all these things because we exist. And so the traditions and this and that. But the problem comes when a tradition is objectified or minimized or just very flattened,
Mhm.
and then somebody comes along, and this is where the troubles exist, and they say, "Hey, X, Y, and Z about that construction in your head, and you are under a different understanding." They bring that crap to you, and you're like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 pal, are you joking with me? No, my reality is this. You're telling me that? That's bull
Mhm.
crap. And the other guy's like, well, wait a second. No, well, here's this, that, and the other. I don't want, no, 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 don't, I don't want to see it. And so any version of that is what's played out in the United States and across the world, Europe, Asia, just everywhere. It's people bringing each other's versions of reality. Wherever those versions coincide, there's not much like tension. But wherever something new is introduced, that's whether true or false, because sometimes it can be true, sometimes that extra information that's brought about is not true at all.
Mhm.
Um, the deciding factor in all that is to have curiosity. If you're so interested, inclined, and to reference it and clear the brush,
Or maybe some traditions should be just embraced for what they are.
unless they're harmful.
Obviously, obviously.
But that therein lies the thing. Some tradition, or not tradition, well, some traditions too, but some notions become um, a hamper
Well,
to. Go ahead.
okay, but now you're just talking about free will because you're an adult human being. You know right from wrong, and I mean, even if it's a tradition, you know if something is harmful. You know if you should participate in something like that. So I'll agree with you. There are maybe some traditions that need to be stopped. Maybe there are some traditions that need to be looked into or looked at, given another going over.
Yeah.
But I don't think those are really traditions. I can't speak for every family, but I mean, I don't see the harm in kids deciding that or kids hunting Easter eggs. I don't see the harm in that. You don't have to be Christian to do that. You don't even have to be spiritual to do that. I don't see the harm in having turkey on Thanksgiving. unless you happen to be a turkey or allergic to it, have some sort of reaction.
No, no, no. But
So,
there are some that are not. It doesn't have to be a tradition in the sense of like a Thanksgiving, this, that, and the other. Well, actually, you
well, if
can.
there's a tradition of going around hitting somebody in the knees with a baseball bat every third Thursday, yeah, that needs to be stopped. I got people over here saying define harmful. Who decides harmful? You are an adult. You know right from wrong. You're
Harmful,
you're you're able to decipher if something is harmful to somebody else or yourself.
harmful is contextual, and it's on a range. So contextual, harmful, dependent on the specifics in which that's defined and the surrounding facts that entails. So you could easily, under the umbrella category of harmful, say that eating a chocolate like Tootsie Roll
Mhm.
is harmful because sugar and cavities and whatever the case. And so there you have some sort of notion of harmful, but there's pleasure involved in it too.
But
Like,
that's still on an individual level. If you're diabetic, yeah, you're going to have an issue. If you've got three cavities in your teeth, yeah, you're going to have an issue. If you don't eat a steady diet of Tootsie Rolls and you have one a month, what's the harm?
right, so it's contextual.
Mhm.
Harmful is contextual. There
But
are, go ahead.
but it's also individual.
Well, that's what I mean.
And I make room for that as well. When I say you're an adult, you have free will, you know what is harmful to you. Like these and cigarettes and me. I know I am I'm constantly amazed at the number of people who feel it their civil duty to say, those will kill you, right? Or those are bad for you. Oh, really? I'm 64 years old. I've never heard that in my life. Do you really honestly think you're the first person to come up with that? But I know that they're harmful. I know that they're a health risk. I have chosen to ignore that. I'm not saying it's smart. I'm saying I've chosen to ignore it. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do. I'm saying I've accepted the risk. I know that it's harmful, but I have made a conscious decision as an adult. Now, if it's harmful to somebody else, I don't think you need to be told. I think you know right from wrong. I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt. Some people I'm not too sure about. Some people I'm not sure they deserve the benefit of the doubt. Yes, Jim, there are always people who don't know right from wrong. We know that. But you can't use that exception as the norm because it's not the norm. If it
What's
was that there are people who he says there are people who don't know right from wrong. That is true. Those people are an exception. You can't use that exception to define the norm. They are not the norm. They are exceptions.
um the
Just like
knowledge?
just like there are people who don't drive. We can't build streets around people that don't drive. We have to build streets for the people that do.
Right, so you're saying that most people know right from wrong.
Hmm.
I want to say that that's self-evident. I feel.
I agree with you.
Well, no, I know because I'm agreeing with you, but but
Ain't it great when somebody agrees with you?
yeah, but I haven't interrogated it.
Hmm.
Um, but if I did, I would say I would go back to context. Broadly speaking, people know right from. Is it reasonable to say that people know right from wrong? I'm leaning on yes, because not only the intrinsic in conscience of the matter in terms of like, oh, that's wrong, I feel internally that's wrong. There's also the aspect of that's wrong, but and it's breaking the law, but breaking the law,
Well,
breaking the law. But so there's also indicators in society.
the
So
fact that we have a society indicates to me that there are more people that know right from wrong that don't. Because what is preventing mass murder in the streets? What's preventing mass looting? We know that it's wrong. That's why it's not happening. We
well,
know right from wrong.
it's so yeah. So that's so I lean towards that because if we do, if society exists because there's order to whatever degree. Now, here's the thing: there's order, but under the category of order, it's a mess. But there's lines in the sand. I don't know why I said it like that. Lines.
Lines.
There's lines in the sand.
Hmm.
That generally, like not murdering or
Hmm.
holding up a freaking bank for whatever
Yeah,
reason. It's that like there's certain things, or like whatever.
right.
That generally people, but there's those outliers, like you said. Um, but I would also say that. So I agree with that. But within that whole mess, there's also this self preservation. I don't know if it's chicken or egg, but if we didn't have these notions of wrong and right, um, like you said, society wouldn't exist because
It would collapse.
right, because we individual families at home would be perched on the roofs looking out for enemies constantly because there's
Yeah,
no rule.
yeah. I built this cruise missile because those kids won't quit playing ZC Top so loud. You know,
Right.
Road Warrior on the freeway.
So there's order, but this order is also self-preservation.
Hmm.
I think that people, like, I don't go and beat up my neighbors. Um, Number one, because I wouldn't want them to do that to me. Well, number one, because that's just wrong. But
Hmm.
if in case I thought it wasn't wrong,
Hmm.
I wouldn't do it more than likely, because there's consequences, and there's also retribution, and I mean
Hmm.
just so there's logic to that.
Sure. Well,
So yeah.
to Jim's point, he says too many. I'd say I put to you the population of incarcerated people as evidence. Then account for the ones you know that didn't get caught. Are you telling me that everybody incarcerated and who hasn't been caught don't know right from wrong? Are you telling me that everybody that broke into somebody's house or killed somebody or robbed a bank doesn't know right from wrong? I put to you that the overwhelming majority know right from wrong and did it anyway.
Well, yeah, because the benefit in their minds was
Hmm.
potentially outweighing the
Hmm.
potential consequence.
Yeah, they knew it was wrong. That's why they tried to hide it. They
And
knew it was wrong. That's why they put a mask on when they held up the bank. They knew it was wrong. They didn't act on that moral decision. It's got nothing to do with knowing the difference between right and wrong.
well, it's all contingent on the specifics of said whatnot. Um, we're assuming that the majority. Okay, so
I
we.
need I need to clarify something. No, they didn't act on that moral decision. I didn't mean that has nothing to do with right and wrong. I meant that has nothing to do with knowing the difference between right and wrong. Because if they don't know the difference between right and wrong, there's no moral decision to be made because morality is out the window. They don't know. And I know what you're talking about. People who maybe have some sort of a mental handicap or mental issue, and they literally, really, honestly can't tell the difference between right and wrong. I submit to you that that is a wee percentage of the people, a very wee percentage of the people, and the folks, the overwhelming majority of the people incarcerated, they knew right from wrong. They just didn't care. They just did it anyway. F the police. I'm robbing the gas station.
But we don't know how many of those people are innocent and still in jail either.
That's true. But again, that's another subset that is not the norm. They are an exception. That is not the norm. You're absolutely right. There are people who have been, through no fault of their own, railroaded into prison. We see stories about that every year. It's not like once a day, but we see a couple of them a year where somebody was found to be innocent after spending X number of years in prison. We know that happens. And just on a personal level, what the hell do you say to somebody that has that? How do you make up for that? You can't make up for that. I don't think you could do enough for that person to make up for the years that they lost.
No, it's
You
it's
know?
it's the system failed them.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's
But
no other way
that,
around it.
but that's those are again those are outliers that do not represent the norm. They're not the median.
Unless it's we can say that
Mhm.
um, factually, and we can say that with the added benefit of not being one of the ones that got stuck with that situation.
Believe me, every defense attorney that's ever represented a case is having evidence re-examined using DNA. Believe me. And that's how a lot of these people have been found to be innocent, was because the DNA didn't match. And then they find somebody else at another prison whose DNA did match.
Yeah.
That's how a lot of these cases have been solved. But again, that's not the norm. But believe me, if there's the possibility of a payday with a lawsuit against a city, a county, or a state, the number of defense attorneys resubmitting evidence for DNA testing would probably astound both of us.
So, using that as an example and sort of backtracking to, we haven't experienced that,
No,
knock
we
on
haven't.
wood,
Yeah,
but from the
yeah. But for the
perspective
grace of God, yeah,
of the person that was dealt those cards,
yeah,
that the system failed them.
yeah. What do you say? How
What
do
do
you
you,
make up for that?
how do you make up for that? And if we transpose that to the subject of traditions and Steve's question on what's harmful, how or how is that defined? There are some traditions in the mind, through the culture, that will judge improperly, and these are things that are in the mind.
Traditions in what way?
Well, the way we know our reality, um, in this country, the way we interact with the population at large, the way we think of citizenship, belonging, who's who, what's what how do we rank the society at large? Do we rank it through the Constitution and what values that entails? Do we Is our lens filtered through other notions that linger from the past? Those are traditions that, although no longer set in law, the mental construction handed down through time
Okay, I see where you're going.
lingers in the minds of people, and the harm that creates is not obvious or external necessarily, but they linger because the pictures in our minds,
Okay, I see where you're going.
yeah, that were
Uh,
handed down to us, basically.
uh,
It's like a tradition, let's say.
I think universally those traditions that you were talking about have been universally condemned by most people.
Externally
You
and in
know,
law, roughly.
yeah, uh, and I agree. There are a lot of so-called traditions that just need to end. They just need to go away. Without getting specific and spelling it out, I get where you're going with that.
Yeah,
They have no place in modern society, and I agree with that 100%.
but the getting rid is a, let's say, fair weather um, hope.
But
But the reality is that what
agreed.
the problem is this. If I let me lay this out, is that all these traditions, including the things brought to us from the past of, the
Hmm.
holidays and such, and
Yeah.
all the other things that are internal or deeper undertow things.
Hmm.
Um, when we grew up in this world, we came in with a blank slate,
Hmm.
but we're surrounded by reference points,
Hmm.
and you know this creates identity. Um,
Hmm.
I took for granted until this past year
Hmm.
this concept of identity. Um, I didn't have anybody feed the idea to me. I interrogated, I squeezed it out from the patterns that I was seeing. And when I think of myself, I know that I have all these reference points that allow me to maneuver in the
Hmm.
world. How I interact with the world, and I am me, and me is
Hmm.
defined by X, Y, and Z, and this and that. Um, when I think of that, I think of I came up with this earlier in the year. At least it's not like, but it's a reference point for me. At the most basic level, it's an obvious thing too. I am a an observer of the reality around me, of everything. So at its fundamental, as far as I can tell, all I am at that fundamental level, it's not all I am, but I'm saying what I can
Yeah.
define is that I observe the reality around me. I interact with the reality around me and all that stuff. But fundamentally, I'm a camera scanning, and there's an internal brain that's processing what I'm scanning, people's reactions, people's claims, people's ideas, this and that. Okay, but on top of that, people are viewing me and then defining me outside of me. I have no control of said thing. But
Hmm.
from my perspective, I am surrounded by what family I was surrounded by, and the cultural norms that that included, and then the reference points of Cuba, Miami, exile community, Sweetwater, Florida,
Yeah.
uh, and just all these things. And all those things are not me, they're part of my reality.
Hmm.
Me includes all that because I was brought into that,
Hmm. That's
but
your environment. Yeah.
it's my environment. But me is actually these eyes
Hmm.
scanning the world at its
Right.
basic fundamental level, and these ears taking in the sounds and words and ideas. Then the indoctrination, let's call it, or we can call it education, of school and family and all these things. All this stew is what I'm carrying like a backpack with me through this world,
Hmm.
and I use that to reflect and contrast with what I come across.
Okay.
That said, my judgments are based on all those things and whatever reasoning I can, like, if somebody brings me something and stuff, all that, let's call it construction, let's call it baggage, let's call it culture, all these things are different from me to the next person, with overlap perhaps, but the next person's view towards me is completely different. The me that I know is the lens and the mind.
Yeah, because you have to live with yourself. You have to live in your head, and you can never get away from it.
Right. So here's
We don't live in your head, so we don't even have a clue.
right. So here's the thing. There are people talking about this harm factor and this tradition factor, and you explaining some things just have to be done away with and such. Just like in my cultural formation that I carry with me, there's this thing called plantains, fried plantains,
Hmm.
that when it's served to me on the plate next to the white rice and black beans and ribs and whatever the case might be, I consume it and I accept it and I internalize it and it's lovely. And why would I question the fried plantains that are delicious, caramelized and whatnot?
Never had one, but go ahead.
It sounds great, right? It's like a little thing, and but just like that, I just want one now for some reason. Just
Never
like
had one.
I just I just auto like propagandize myself. I self Manchurian candidated myself. Um,
You're gonna be heading for the heading for the 24-hour cafe as soon as you're done here, aren't you?
give me
Screw clam chowder. Give me too many fried plantains.
so just like I don't question that plantain,
Hmm.
there are people that have internalized
Hmm.
notions that are simply destructive,
Hmm.
and they don't question it because it's as true as drinking water.
And I knew that's where you were going, and that is always going to be the case.
Mhm.
That's our job as individuals. That's our job to not teach our kids that kind of thinking and that kind of behavior.
Yeah,
That's and if there are a lot of people that think along those lines, that's our failure.
there's a lot of people that think along those lines.
I know there are.
They're
But I
so
know they are. But where are they getting it from?
they've been passed it on.
Exactly my point, and that's why I say those kind of family traditions. Remember, I said I don't know every family, and I can't speak for every family. Those traditions have to be done away with, and the only way we can do that is it has to be up to us. We have to be the ones to not teach our kids that. We have to be the ones to teach our kids that that is wrong. That's part of that whole right and wrong thing. You have this discussion with 3-year olds that you are not supposed to do X, Y, and Z. And that kind of thing is wrong. When they're old enough to start understanding a little bit more, you reinforce a little bit more and you talk about it and you teach your kids what's right and what's wrong. Kids don't grow up knowing right from wrong. They grow up knowing the right from wrong that we as their parents teach them. And there are far too many parents who have let the TV or childcare raise their kids. Some of it just not through anything, any decision they have made. They just find themselves in a position to where they have to do that. Others quite voluntarily. You know, if daycare is raising your child and you're not, you might want to re-examine a few things. You know,
Yeah, this is where the returning to the Constitution thing.
well, returning to the tradition of the family, to me.
I'm making
Hmm.
a point as I see it. This is where the Constitution, to me, comes into play. Not as this stand-in, arbitrary, old hat thing. It's a tool that basically, if applied, prevents, because again, the mind is the mind and the traditions passed on
Hmm.
are multiple ones. There's not just good things, there's also kind of half good,
Hmm.
half bad stuff. It's the human experience of all these things we carry around with us because
Hmm.
our worlds were built, and,
Hmm.
and we use our logic if and we try, um, but the Constitution is and I might be playing it up a little bit too much, but um, I don't want to abandon that. And it's that's a problem. That I don't want to abandon because I believe that a standard like that is basically the foundation of the country. And so what I'm saying, why am I bringing this up, is that if all else fails, in terms of like, you know, people aren't taught well,
Hmm.
poorly raised, ideas slip through the cracks because they're not questioned, all these things. Well, kind of, sort of, the Constitution as a foundational document that created the country, and that people pledge allegiance to, namely in school all our lives, and in the military, and politicians, and so on, um, and at sports events. If it's an Easter egg situation, which it kind of is, then that's a huge freaking problem. Huge problem, because it is, when all else fails, the document that preserves the idea of liberty, and the line in the sand between my person and the next person. So if I can't get it together and find it within my moral entrails, um, then I have to do it because of that, because it protects me, so I can go about my business. So I have to respect other people, going about their business, because it only works that way. You see, it
Yep.
only works that way. But so, if all else fails, the moral learning, the family teaching, and this and that, I assume that would be the guide, and that's why I'm very, 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 um, um, I tend to be concerned with that, and it's a selfish concern because it's self-preservation in a sense. But while being self-preserving, you're also, um, doing that job for everybody else, in terms of respecting their personal spaces.
Hmm.
In terms of, so it's so. But I am probably partially, or to a fair amount, wrong.
In what way do you think you're wrong?
Um, well, um,
You think there are too many people that don't see it that way, or?
I don't want. I like my traditions, and the
Hmm.
good ones. I think
Okay.
that one's a good one for obvious reasons
Hmm.
that I just laid out roughly.
Well, I'll say it again. I don't see it as a tradition. I see it as the supreme law of the land. And as you said yourself, the foundation of this nation. So, you know,
Well,
I you can't have one without the other. You can't have one without the other. The two are inseparable. This country and that constitution, they are inseparable because if one goes, the other goes with it. And
yeah,
I say that because what makes it this country is laid out. You know, there are too many people that think the Constitution is just the first 10 amendments. That is not the Constitution. That is a small part. Most folks have never even read Article 1, Article 2, or Article 3. We haven't even got to amendments yet. They don't know what any of those things do. So if you take that Constitution away, you have no US. You have no USA. And if you take away the USA, you have no Constitution. One goes with the other.
well, I like the sentiment. I agree with the sentiment, but
Now, you may think that it's under attack, but I've been hearing that my entire life. I've been hearing that my entire life. And if I listened to every naysayer who was ready to put it, in the ground, buried, I'd have dug that grave to China by now.
Yeah, it's always, so the thing is that, here's the thing. I'll be bold. I know what concerns me, and I know why.
Okay.
And brought and firmly, uh, I'm not joking. That said,
Hmm.
and I'm under no illusion,
Hmm.
and I can and have been actually making a case.
Hmm.
Um, and it's not trivial, the case I'm making. And I'm
I'm
not
not.
doing it, and I'm not doing it for anybody. I'm doing it for myself, but I'm doing it but leaving that to the side.
I'm not doubting you. I want you to know I'm not doubting you at all. Okay.
Yeah, well, there's a problem. I'll just say that there's a big
Okay.
problem.
Okay.
There's a huge freaking problem. It's not good, but leaving that to the side and agreeing with your what you said, it's always been like you said. If with what you said, if I had, I'll say it this way: if I had a quarter for every time, that thing, across history,
Hmm.
that's absolutely true.
Well,
But
I'm thinking about just in my lifetime.
yeah, but I'm saying that
Mm-hmm.
I'm agreeing with that. But with that said, um, it's also a feature of that, of the very law that we have, where people fight it out in a continuous, unending, cyclical process across decades and decades, where people, the tension of people wanting to get away with it, or wanting to change it, or wanting to alter it at the state level, at the federal level, in little getting around it by adding laws that sort of circumvent certain things, taking it, like, just all this stuff is a feature, making it difficult to topple this sort of like mainstream, baseline, overarching, imperfect protection for every, regular old Joe citizen walking about. So people fight it out, but in general, the thing is that people get to live their life out, with a known, you know, sort of general standard of stability. Um, that's the process that we see, and the consequences, we get to have some sort of generalized stability. um, but however, that may not be completely true. It's partially true, but even that may not be completely true. there's a the problem is this: with all the myths and traditions and stuff, there's people always trying to subvert, um,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
so the, the problem is this: when you have a myth that I agree with, um, I want it to continue, because I think it's good.
Hmm.
I agree that it's good. I affirm that it's good,
Hmm.
um, and it may be an imperfect myth or tradition or what have you. Um, but I don't. I'm not interested in some schmucko coming over and, you know poking and prodding and trying to damage or undo. I mean, this is the same, issue I have with people that want to undo religious traditions, um, just traditions across the board, unethically, in my opinion, without considering the consequences of poking at that.
Just poking their nose into other people's business where they have no place.
Right. So just basically, just to, as a recap, or to end this line of thinking, I think that we have a little bit of a problem broadly in the or not broadly specifically, but broadly in that these documents that basically point to an idea or
Mhm.
an ideal and a process. Um, People have mythicized it into a cartoon
Oh,
or
okay.
or into something that
And-
you know instead of 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 principles.
mhm,
Which, by the way, it's not like I'm not suggesting. Again, it's self-preservation in my. Yes, there's a little bit of romanticism, or not romanticism, but for goodness sakes, this tradition came down to us,
Well,
and
not all romanticism is wrong, man.
well, my point is that when you turn something like the law
Hmm.
that creates the conditions for equalness in terms of rights and such
Hmm.
and this and that into some plastic doohickey of a thing or a flyer that was put in your mailbox that's just right to throw
Hmm.
away. Um, and what's good is presenting this virtue, presenting this sort of like and what the hell does it mean, you know, to have this surface level
Well,
um, I'll say it, the surface level Americanness without the substance, without the stew.
mhm.
Without the stew, you have the spoons. You're playing spoons on the lap. You know, you're doing the performance, but all that really, to me, again, because the reality of it is that everything I believe, I've realized this year. Um, the thing is that it's performance. What I see. Not everybody, but I've seen a lot of performance, and so
Mhm,
that's disturbing.
mhm.
It has been disturbing for me, and and that's it. I just wanted to say that it's part of this whole it's part of this whole tradition thing. I think that we in some cases we distort so much something that's very important that it becomes problematic.
Well, as far as people trying to get around the law, that's been that way ever since the laws have been created.
Yeah,
There are always going to be people who try to get around or subvert the law.
yeah,
You've heard it. Build a 10-foot wall, somebody will build an 11-foot ladder. That kind of thing. I mean, and that is the case. There are always going to be people who try to get around the law. Um, what can you say?
yeah.
That is just a fact of life. Jim Dockrell brings up something here. Um, if you knowingly put someone in the position where they must do something they know is wrong, are you just as guilty of the wrongdoing? What's your opinion on that?
If no, if you knowingly put someone in the position where they must do something they know is wrong, are you just as guilty of the wrongdoing? Um, it depends on if you give an example that would be better. Um, because why are you doing? You're putting in a position that you know is wrong. Is wrong tentative in terms of like, is it a wrong to pressure and coerce someone, but the outcome is to the benefit of the same person, or is it the benefit of yourself? So you push them to do wrong. Is it right? Is it contradictory to do something wrong to arrive at something right? What's the specifics of the situation? Um,
Um, I don't think it needs to go that far. I think the key word in this is knowingly. If you knowingly put somebody in a position where they must do something they know is wrong, are you just as guilty of the wrongdoing? Yes.
No, it depends on what the position you're putting them in is, what the definition of, in this case that he's mentioning, wrong is. It just,
Here we
so
go.
like all the everything
Here we
he
go. Say someone has to steal food because of something you did. See, I don't see that as an example because I think the person still has the option to not steal food. There are places out there where you can get free meals. There are other options. I don't see this as a viable thing. But if you want to go with it straight down this, say someone has to steal food because of something you did, yes, you're just as guilty because you knowingly put them in that position.
um so what if the person has no other so on your side you put them in that position where they have to steal food. um
Knowing that there are other options out there. But, let's set that aside. Let's say there are no other options. They either steal food or they starve, but you put them in that position. You're just, to me, you're just as guilty.
okay, so broadly I'd say yes, but there's still, it all depends on what that guy you put the position in
Yeah.
did in relation to. So, in other words, if the facts are that it's just some boss hog guy and he's like messing with this guy and he like impoverishes him and then they have to run and grab some apples off of the side. I just, or did
Well,
that guy not live up to this one guy, and so as a retaliation is not good, but are there other facts missing here? Of course there
yeah,
are.
and I see your point because let's use this example. Okay, there's an example would be an evil parent, a neglectful parent that starves a child, and that child goes out and steals something to eat. You are just as guilty as the theft. In fact, you're guilty of more. But if you are a boss that has to lay off 3 people and that person can't get another job and he decides to go out and steal food, I don't think you're guilty of anything.
What if the boss picked the one guy to get laid off because the other option was this hot mini skirt secretary lady?
It doesn't matter because the person who got laid off still had other options.
But the guy that got laid off was more effective at work and showed the credentials
Doesn't matter.
for the
That's
review.
completely irrelevant. That's another subject entirely.
No, but the boss's choice to forego the, let's call it, the credit rating of the guy at work, and he stuck with the miniskirt secretary, and I'm picturing with a red blouse and a black skirt for some reason, uh, and high heels. Um, so if he picked with all the logistics of that, he decided on the sexiness instead of the actual virtue of work performance. Um, and he put this guy out to pasture. I
Mhm.
don't know, man. I think that sure, it's true.
Okay,
He had the choice and he had the power to make the choice.
but
But go ahead, go ahead.
but is the boss guilty of this guy stealing food? Is the boss as guilty of the theft as the guy who made the choice to steal that food?
Well,
I don't think so.
no, the boss is guilty of what he's guilty of, which is he decided on sexy over performance. And
Which is, yeah,
no, no, but let me say it. Um, I'm naming the name of what he's guilty of. Okay, to make it,
okay,
he decided to stick with sexy secretary,
okay.
let this guy off. His decision, he's responsible for, whether you want to call it guilty, not guilty, whatever the case. I'm getting to it. The consequences of his choice, which end at the door out, from inside the office out, led, that's it. His part is done. He created the snowball that would eventually lead to the guy stealing the apple. I'm saying that his part is his interaction with reality and choosing what he did, that choice, moral or not, anybody can make their decision whether that's appropriate or not. Sexy versus utility,
Performance. Yeah.
performance. But then that set off the roller coaster ride that this man that was working now has to go. This is just a scenario, but he has to go, and he could go and ask the fruit stand guy, "Hey, can I have a free apple?" He could do that instead of stealing it. But just the same, everything is dependent on the context of what's going on.
No, it's not dependent on the context of anything because the guy, once he gets laid off, still has choices. Get another job, food banks,
What do you
homeless pantries
wait a
where
second?
he can get food.
Yeah, but I just you said no. I just explained you bypassed. I said that the man could go to the fruit vendor and instead of
Hmm.
stealing
Yes,
it, that includes a choice.
but that wasn't the question. You laid out a big long scenario that was not the question. Is he guilty of the man stealing food? Is the boss just as guilty as the man who stole the food? I
No,
said no.
no, I didn't leave the question. I expanded the question and included everything that the question required. I said that the man, the
But
boss, there's consequences, and that, dude, I said
but
that
you
the boss ends his consequences at the door, and then
okay.
everything that follows is a snowball.
So he's not as guilty as the guy who actually stole the food.
No, he's guilty of interacting with the world around him and making the decisions he makes, and the consequence. We're all guilty because we interact with the world around us. Specifically, he did not take the hand. We're all interconnected. He did not take the hand that he just fired and put the hands on the apple and
Mhm.
force him to steal it. So is he
Right.
guilty of that? No, that's clear as day. I'm not
And
inferring.
that was the question.
Yeah, and that question is I'll say simplistic. What
Mhm.
I'm saying is encompasses all that and more. I'm
Mhm.
saying that actions have consequence. Everything, whatever.
Yeah.
I guess it is what it is. I laid it out. It's
Yeah.
there. You
Well,
know,
here he's got a couple of others here. Um, someone punches somebody out because of a practical joke you played on them. Yeah, I think you are just as culpable because you set it up to where you played a practical joke that resulted in somebody getting punched out.
I don't
I think
think so.
I think you're just as guilty in that scenario.
I don't think so.
You
I
don't
think
think
that
so?
no. I think that your option,
Mhm.
the way you categorized it, is completely reasonable. If those are the facts, it's all dependent because what if? See, here's the problem. What if the joke did not? In other words, the punch was a dial above 10.
Mhm.
The punch was a dial above 10, and the joke was a -1 or a 1. We don't know that
Mhm.
unless we say, hey, the joke was about X, Y, and Z, and so the guy punched him. We would measure whether or not a punch was appropriate. You could argue a punch is never appropriate,
Yeah, understood.
and I
There are
would
people that would take that.
and I, no, and I would agree if you argued that a punch is never appropriate. I would agree, but I would leave a little space because
Mhm.
there has to be some situation.
Okay, but here's my let me make it a little bit more personal. I play a practical joke on you. You misinterpret it and punch the shit out of the guy standing next to you.
Hmm. You made it.
That's my fault. That's
Oh,
my fault
so you make the joke, and I take out retribution on another person.
on somebody else. Yes.
That's not your fault.
Some I think it is because if I'm going to play a practical joke on you, you should know it was me and not the guy standing next to you.
No, wait a second. Wait, let me get this straight. This is
Well, let's make it simple. Let's
no,
make it
no,
simple.
no,
You're
no. Don't change
standing
it.
next.
Don't change it. Let's keep this one.
Well, I am. No, I'm gonna. I am. It. We're keeping it, but I'm expanding on it just a little bit.
Okay.
You're standing at the bar. and you got a beer in your hand, and I walk up and I smack your shoulder. I'm standing on this side, I smack this shoulder, and you spill your beer. And you lean over and you punch the guy standing next to you because you think he spilled your beer. That's my fault because I did that, not the guy standing next to you.
In that scenario, you
Mm-hmm.
created the conditions
Mm-hmm.
so that the other guy could be confused. And in that scenario, um, it's a pretty tough scenario because
Yeah, it's on me.
once you get
It's on
excited,
me.
yeah, in that scenario, it's. But now, if we go back to your previous scenario,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm standing here and the guy's next to me and you're there,
Mm-hmm.
and I just decked the guy out of something you said, that's my fault.
I'll give you that right there. See, because you knew I was the one that did it.
Right, and I decided to take it out on
Take it
this
on him. Now that's on you.
guy.
That's
it
on you.
it had now it may not have been nice what you said, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't apply to this guy next to me, this poor schmuck that's next to me. It
Yeah.
doesn't apply to him, the poor guy. He's
Yeah.
just sitting there.
Yeah. Jim goes further. What if the boss put the employee in a position where they got fired for following instructions? That's why we have courts, Jim. Believe me, the labor department loves stuff like that.
But
And
whose fault would that be?
it would be the boss. It would
Uh,
be the boss's fault for putting him in that position. He followed instructions and got fired for following those instructions.
but what if the boss? Check this out.
Well, we can what if it to death. What if the boss is a blonde?
No,
No.
what if the boss's boss told
Hmm.
the boss under the one guy to do just that, and he was just following orders? Would that go upstream to the main boss?
Yes. Yes. If you knowingly tell somebody to do something, if you're in charge, you're a supervisor, and you knowingly tell somebody to do something you know is going to get them fired, you are guilty of setting him up. And you should be fired. The employee might get written up for you didn't question it, you didn't ask somebody else, this don't seem right, you just blindly followed. But the boss who directed you to do something knowing that it was a fireable offense, out. I've made that call at the
What
casino. I've made that call.
What if you, as the employee, one evening before leaving work, took a handful of photos because you caught the boss with that red skirted secretary, and then you use it as leverage so he doesn't fire you? And for some reason, you inside that company seem to get raises every 3 months where everybody else doesn't. and
There's a thing called blackmailing. You go to jail for that. Uh,
who's
Steve says Steve says the boss can't be guilty. A person can feel like the boss should be guilty, but that's putting yourself in the place of deciding your choice is better than the boss's.
in terms of the first
Ooh.
part? In terms of, is this in terms of the stealing an apple down because he got
Yeah.
fired? Or is this
Yeah.
so a
That
person? Go ahead.
a person can feel like that boss should be guilty, but that's you putting yourself in the place of deciding your choice is better than the boss's.
Wait a second. How does that work? In the
Boss has to lay off 3 people. There's 25 people working. He's got to lay off 3 people.
Yeah.
He's got to make the decision who gets laid off. And usually, not always, usually that goes last one hired, first one laid off. And it goes, you've been here the longest, you're safe. You've been here the shortest. I'm sorry, I got to lay 3 people off. You 3 at the bottom of the run, you got to go. I apologize. It's not always that way. There are cases where somebody is maybe malingering a little bit, not pulling their weight, they get laid off. But generally, it's a seniority type thing. Um, what Steve is saying is we're putting ourselves in a position of deciding that our choice of who gets laid off is better than the boss's choice. That
Oh, okay. So he's bypassing the consequence of the boss firing, and then the
being
employee,
guilty
then going and doing what he's doing.
and
So
stealing food, yeah.
So yeah, but is Steve, so we are the ones observing this event. Is
Hmm.
Steve placing us as one of the employees within that thing? Because if we're observing this, we can easily make the judgment that
Sure.
we have a boss. The boss makes a decision, and then the employee, as a consequence of being fired and now is hungry, steals an apple. Let's say,
Hmm.
and so is it. We know that the act of stealing the apple is theft direct, so that person is guilty of that. But the what my suggestion was that the actions of the boss, although not linked explicitly in terms of like he didn't tell the employee to go steal apples, but his actions did cause a ripple effect that led to this man having to make a
Hmm.
choice, a parent choice of stealing. So I'm just bridging that as not everything has connections because we all interact with each other.
Sure.
But in terms of guilty, the act of taking in itself, even though the consequences led to that, you're responsible for the theft of that apple.
Yeah, you're responsible for your own actions, and I agree with that. I
I
agree with
mean,
that.
yeah,
Mm.
but that's why I tried to throw in the red skirted secretary part to
Yeah.
create more of a dynamic there.
Well, on the redheaded secretary. See, you went for red skirt. I went for red head. That says something.
No,
Freud would have a field day with that.
if we combined all the red, it would just be
Mhm.
one like
Yeah,
firecracker
a red faced, red headed in a red skirt or something like that.
in a little red Corvette.
In a little red Corvette, exactly. And on that happy note, let's go ahead and land the plane, man. It's time.
All right, all right, guys. Well, thank you for hanging out. We go live every Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time here on the Trampled Underfoot podcast show on YouTube. And we also have a Facebook site over on Facebook where you can check that out. We usually post images and sometimes links to videos over the things that we talk about. So be sure to check that out. And we also have a website which is trampledunderfootpodcast.com, and you can catch past episodes over there. So make sure to visit that. We're also sponsored by. Your audio went out,
My
or did,
audio go out? Am I
yeah,
back?
now you're back. Now you're back.
It helps when you unmute the mic after you cough.
Oh, okay.
My audio didn't go nowhere. Arneo Media, yes. Look, come on. It's you and me here. This is not the first time I've talked about Harneal Media. You know that. I know that. We all know that. So carry yourself over to harnealmedia.com. Click on that contact us button and shoot Steve a message. Come on. He's sitting there waiting for you. He's right there waiting for you to contact him. You know you want to. Why? Because he's very competitively spiced. He's very competitively spiced. Yes, he is. Seasoned, but understated. Anyway, he's very competitively priced for those of you who can speak. And it's 100% personalized service. Believe me, when you're dealing with Steve over at Harneal Media, you're getting 100% personalized service. Why? Because Steve, it's a one man operation. I'm telling you. I know what you're thinking. How good can a one man operation be? I've been with him since day one. I've been with him since day one. There's a link to Harneal Media in every video and every live stream on this channel. And it's that way for a reason. He's that good. So carry yourself over harnealmedia.com. Click that contact us link and tell him Trampled Underfoot Podcast sent you. That's Harneal Media, HARNEAL Media.com. Sponsor of Trampled Underfoot Podcast.com. And you stay spicy, Steve.
I thought that I pressed the right at the right moment. I thought I got the clue, the cue there,
You
but
didn't know I was going for something later on.
when you said spice, I all of a sudden I pictured I pictured Steve wearing a like some sort of like Taco Bell like sauce thing
Yeah, yeah,
as a Halloween costume or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah. A chef's hat made into a salt shaker where he takes it off and just does that over his dinner and puts it back on. That
Well,
works.
um, well, all right then. So listen, enjoy the rest of the week, guys. Thank you guys for hanging out. We hope you enjoyed this. We'll catch you next time. Peace out.
Stay spicy.
I'm looking for the button.